They called her too soft, too perfect, can you imagine, too pretty to bleed. But Lieutenant Reese-Marlowe didn't waste breath arguing with the doubters. Oh no, she just trained harder, pushing herself to the edge every single day. Picture this, alarms screaming through the base, the convoy missing, tension thick as tar, nobody called for her, nobody even thought of her, but there she was, rifle gripped tight, eyes blazing with focus, her heart pounding like a war drum. 12 grueling hours later, can you believe it, she strode out of enemy territory, 6 wounded soldiers trailing behind her, their lives owed to her grit, and a silence fell so heavy no one dared shatter it. Wow, what kind of courage does that take? But hold on, before we get lost in her legend, let me hit you with a question straight from the soul. Are you ready to stand up and shout out gratitude for these unsung heroes who give everything and ask for nothing? Seriously, if stories like Reese's, raw, real, and bursting with power, light a fire in you, then smash that subscribe button right now. Help us keep these tales alive, because what's unfolding here isn't just some story, it's a wake-up call, a thunderclap roaring about the quiet legends hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to notice. The air slammed into her like a wall of dry concrete, 47 degrees Celsius, unrelenting sun beating down, dust swirling like fine powder around the landing zone. Lieutenant Reese-Marlowe stepped off the Chinook's ramp with a calm that could steady a storm, her helmet tucked under her arm, her gaze locked straight ahead. Did she even feel the heat? Not a blink, not a flinch under the crushing weight of her gear, and definitely no nod to the stares that clung to her like a sticky fog. Oh, she was noticed, all right. On a base like this, cut off, understaffed, creaking under its own monotony, every new face was a show, and Reese? With her razor-sharp uniform, those symmetrical features you couldn't peel your eyes from, and a presence that demanded attention, she was a whole theater production. She wasn't there to smile or strut, but that didn't stop the whispers. One guy by the vehicle depot didn't even bother lowering his voice, too pretty to bleed. Can you hear the sneer in that? She didn't turn, didn't twitch, just marched through the gate, past the blast wall, into a compound where the real war that day was fought with cold shoulders, rigid ranks, and discipline crumbling like old bread. Her orders were crystal clear. Forward deployed tactical support, greenlit to lead rapid response teams, trained to pull people out of firefights. But Major Redfield? That man didn't give a damn. His face looked like it quit listening a decade ago, handshake quick and stiff, voice dripping with exhaustion and a patronizing edge. Logistics, he said, flat as a board, no room for debate, no warm welcome, just a flick of his head toward the back of the base and a warning, don't stir the pot. Did she argue? Nope. She saluted, spun on her heel, and headed to her new home, a metal box baking next to the fuel depot, walls slick with heat. Inside? A cot, a fan that whined like a dying animal, a rack with hooks bent out of shape, no mirror, no frills, no pretense. She sank onto the bed's edge and let out one slow breath. She'd faced this before, Bragg, Nellis, the academy. It wasn't the job that wore you down, it was the way men turned silence into a blade. She didn't unpack much, just the essentials, a laminated terrain map, her folded flag, and a photo of her old unit, snapped 6 months before the world flipped upside down. 4 of them gone now, dead, the 5th, out on medical. She brushed her thumb over the photo's edge, did it sting, then tucked it under the cot. Next morning, she was up early, boots dusted, clipboard ready, standing tall at the logistics center. The sergeant barely glanced her way, muttering, "Thought you were public affairs." Ouch, really? She didn't blink, just slid her orders over. The day blurred into paperwork, schedules, and sloppy files from officers too lazy to care. She caught 3 big mistakes in under an hour. Impressive, right? But no thanks, no questions, nothing. She flagged a risky route in the Alpha patrol cycle, the lieutenant nodded, then dumped her form on a stack and ghosted her. That night in the DFAC, the noise was wild, cards slapping tables, forks clanging, dumb jokes bouncing off tin walls. Then it came again, from some corner table, too pretty to bleed. Same guy? New guy? Who knows? She didn't look up, just kept eating, forkful by forkful, calm as a lake, totally in command. By day 5, it was obvious they were boxing her out, no weapons quals, no night patrol briefs, her drone coverage ideas ignored. No one shoved her, no one dissed her to her face, but doors stayed shut, orders stalled, and every hallway chat froze when she passed. Did she crack? Never. She ran 10 kilometers before dawn, trained with scavenged gear behind the depot, kept her rifle spotless even though they wouldn't let her carry it. And every night, she pored over satellite maps, movement patterns, soil temps, enemy vectors, not because they asked, but because she knew one day they'd fumble, and she'd have to act fast. That day hit on the 12th. A 6-man convoy rolled out to checkpoint Mako, routine, 2 Humvees, light armor, no red flags, until the radio died. One word crackled through, contact. Then nothing. Reese was in the command shack when it reached Redfield, watching officers scramble over screens, chaos swallowing order. No visuals, drones off elsewhere, last ping near a sketchy ridgeline full of shadows. Redfield barely moved, glanced at the map, waved at the tech, hold off on QRF. Wait. Wait. Reese's voice cut through, low and sharp, they're in the blind. Wait, and it's a recovery, not a rescue. He didn't even look at her. That wasn't a request, Lieutenant. She went quiet, but her mind. Racing, distance, timing, terrain. She didn't need his okay, she needed action. And when no one stepped up, she did. 12 minutes later, poof, she was gone, not at her desk, not in her zone, just vanished. The sun was dipping, painting the compound gold when she made her move, no permission, no paperwork. She strode from the logistics tent, past the comms relay, through the vehicle depot, straight to the armory's side corridor where the quartermaster smoked after 1800. He was out, perfect. No signature needed, her badge still worked. Inside, rifles lined up like soldiers, silent, pristine. She grabbed gear fast, M4, 210 rounds, SIG sidearm, med pack, for morphine pens, field dressings, a low-frequency beacon. The radio? That made her pause. What did it mean to take it? No turning back, court-martial or worse if it flopped. She took it anyway. She geared up in the dark, no fanfare, just steady breaths. She muffled the morphine pens with gauze, strapped up, hid the beacon under her armor. One last peek at her map, ridgelines, ambush spots, then out the busted gate she went, slipping past guards glued to a drone feed leagues away. She melted into the rock fields, into a valley no tourist map dared touch, dead land, carved by floods, not plans. She moved quick at first, boots crunching stone, then slowed near Sector Delta 6. That last convoy ping. Right here, before the silence swallowed it. What got her wasn't the static, it was the void after. Were they alive? She crouched low, eyes scanning ridges for sniper nests, feeling danger without needing proof. The wind shifted, burnt rubber, smoke, coppery blood, bam. She dropped, crawling to a rock just big enough to hide her. What would you do in her shoes? That's Reese Marlowe, too pretty to bleed. Ha! Too tough to break. There it was, wreckage sprawled out before her like a battlefield's broken heart. 2 vehicles, one flipped over like some cruel giant had swatted it aside, the other cratered on its left flank, a jagged wound torn into its steel flesh. Smoke still drifted upward from under the hood, weak and ghostly, curling into the blazing sky. Can you smell that acrid sting? The sun hadn't dropped yet, hanging high and merciless. This disaster had unfolded no more than an hour ago, the freshness of the chaos clawing at her nerves. No enemy patrol in sight, no movement, no sound, just an eerie stillness that screamed danger louder than any explosion. Lieutenant Reese Marlowe moved forward in short, fierce bursts, her boots kicking up dust, her sharp eyes scanning the flanks, left, right, every shadow a potential threat. Still nothing. Was the enemy lurking, watching her every move? At 20 meters, her breath caught, oh God, a boot. Then a leg, bent backward at an angle so wrong it twisted her gut, dust caked into the fabric like a shroud, blood soaked into the rock beneath in a dark, tragic stain. Her hands moved on pure instinct, rifle up, scan left, scan right, approach. In 10 heart-thumping seconds, she was there, kneeling beside him, fingers trembling as they pressed to his neck. Nothing, no pulse, no life. She whispered his name, Tucker, a desperate plea against the silence, no answer. Private Tucker, just 21, that wide, boyish smile from his file photo flashing in her mind, how could this happen to him? She'd seen it just last week, that grin so full of promise, now snuffed out forever. Her throat tightened, but she swallowed hard and moved on, there was no time to grieve, not yet. Behind the second vehicle, the scene hit her like a punch, 2 men. One moving, one still as death itself. The living soldier was fighting, his shaky fingers fumbling to press a field wrap into his thigh, blood seeping through, staining his hands red. Could he even hold on? When he saw her, he flinched, fear. Shock, then his eyes widened, then wider still, recognition dawning like a lifeline. Lieutenant, he gasped, a ragged cry of hope. She didn't answer, words were a luxury she couldn't afford. She was already beside him, dropping to her knees, pulling a gauze roll from her pack with hands that didn't dare tremble. She assessed the wound in a heartbeat, deep, gushing, but not fatal if she moved fast enough. Applying pressure, she worked with ferocious precision, every second a battle against the ticking clock. Beside him, the other soldier lay unconscious, his chest barely rising, shrapnel peppered his ribs like cruel, jagged stars, his pulse racing, thready, slipping away. No time for stitches, no sterile hospital, just a seal wrap slapped on tight and a quick shot of morphine to dull his agony. She stabilized them both, her mind a whirlwind. Could she keep them alive? She had to. She pushed forward, relentless, unstoppable. 10 meters downhill, tucked in a rock crevice so tight it seemed impossible, she found him, Corporal Mendez. He was curled up like a wounded animal, shell-shocked, his eyes vacant, one ear deafened by the blast, his arm dangling at an angle that made her wince, fractured, no doubt. He didn't even recognize her at first, lost in a fog of trauma. How could war strip a man so bare? She knelt right in front of him, her voice cutting through the haze, calm but commanding. Corporal, it's Lieutenant Marlowe. We're moving, now. Slowly, painfully, recognition flickered in his haunted gaze, and with her steady hands guiding him, he struggled to his feet. He limped, every step a gritted teeth fight, but he followed her, trusting her, clinging to her strength. Then, oh, the sight, fingers twitching beneath the tail of the second Humvee, a desperate spark of life. The fourth man was buried under that beast of a vehicle, too heavy to lift, too cruel to leave. She hunting for a metal rod in the wreckage caught her eye, jagged, but solid. She wedged it under the axle, braced it against a stone, and threw every ounce of her weight into it. Her back screamed in protest, muscles burning, straining to their breaking point. The frame shifted, inch by agonizing inch, just enough, yes, enough, for him to crawl out, battered but breathing, broken ribs, dislocated shoulder, but alive, alive. She hauled him up, her own pain a distant roar drowned out by the fierce rush of relief. Had she really saved him? No stretcher, no air cover, just 4 wounded soldiers and a brutal 2-hour climb back to base over terrain that chewed boots to ribbons and shredded knees raw. Did she hesitate? Not for a second, she moved. She hoisted the worst case, Corporal Gant, the heaviest, over her shoulder, his weight crushing, a constant, aching reminder of the stakes. The others staggered behind her in a loose, desperate triangle, their steps faltering but unbroken. She led them, eyes locked on the ridgelines, one hand always near her trigger. Were the enemy out there, waiting to pounce? She didn't know, couldn't know, but she'd be damned if she let her guard drop. She pushed them mercilessly, allowing only 60-second gasps of rest, 60 seconds, no more. She shoved water into their trembling hands, rewound field dressings with fierce care, and when one soldier lagged, "Oh, the audacity," she growled, half laughing, half deadly serious, "Move, or I'll shoot you in the foot myself." He flashed a weak, brave smile and pressed on. Could they make it? They had to. At the halfway ridge, she triggered the locator beacon, a silent, blazing cry for help. 10 minutes later, "Can you hear it?" The first recon drone buzzed overhead, a lifeline in the sky. 15 minutes more, and 2 medevac trucks roared out from FOB Kaidar, engines howling with urgency. And when she finally stepped through that outer gate, armor scorched black, blood staining her vest, 6 men trailing behind her, every single one accounted for, the silence that crashed over the base was deeper than any explosion, heavier than the dust settling in her wake. Had she really done it? Against all odds. Major Redfield stood in the courtyard, jaw locked tight, eyes cold and unreadable as granite. Did he even see her? The whole base watched, breath held, hearts pounding. No one clapped, no one dared speak. Reese looked straight ahead, past the judgment, past the politics, past the disbelief still festering in their stares. She didn't smile, didn't shout, just whispered, more to herself than anyone, a quiet, defiant fire in her voice. "Too pretty to bleed, right?" Oh, the weight of those words, did they sting him? The base froze, a living tableau of awe. Guards gripped their rifles tighter, medics rushed forward, taking the wounded from her shoulders with hands that trembled, not from disdain, but from a loss for words. How do you thank someone for the impossible? Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. No ceremony, no blaring sirens, just dust rising beneath her weary boots and the soft, miraculous breathing of 6 men who had no business being alive. Reese handed over her last soldier to the stretcher team without a sound, her hands scraped raw, stiff with exhaustion. Could they feel her sacrifice? Her left thigh throbbed with deep bruising from a fall on the ridge, something in her shoulder had torn carrying Gant, the pain a relentless shadow. But she didn't limp, didn't stumble, she walked forward, back ramrod straight, rifle still slung across her chest, her eyes fierce, unbroken, unbreakable. Redfield stood encircled by 3 junior officers and the watch sergeant, arms folded, mouth a tight, disapproving line. Did he dare judge her now? She stopped 2 paces before him, the tension crackling like a live wire. Around them, the crowd swelled, no orders given, no call sent out, yet perimeter teams drifted inward, maintenance crews froze mid-task, gloves half on, a drone operator lingered with his headset buzzing, and even the Chow Hall staff lined the fence, trays forgotten, everyone watching, waiting. Could they feel the shift? She met Redfield's gaze, unflinching, and delivered her final radio report with a clarity that cut through the haze. Convoy reached. 4 wounded, 2 Kia. Enemy contact confirmed, indirect IED followed by disorganized follow-up. Defensive terrain used. Return completed on foot. Med-evac triggered on fallback ridge, beacon deployed. Her voice was steady, no pride, no fear, just the raw, unvarnished truth. Did he hear the weight of it? His face stayed stone cold, no questions, no nod to her feet. Instead, his words sliced the air, icy and measured. You left the base without orders, armed with equipment not signed out through proper channels. You engaged without authorization, and you disobeyed a direct instruction to stand down. The accusation landed like a slap, cold, cruel, calculated. Could he not see what she'd done? A murmur rippled through the crowd, shoulders straightened, eyes narrowed. Even the wounded on their stretchers lifted their heads, straining to hear. Did they feel the injustice too? One let out a sound, half laugh, half scoff, but the rest held their breath, the air thick with defiance. Reese didn't flinch, didn't beg, she just said, calm as steel, correct. One word, did it burn him, loaded with unshakable truth. Redfield nodded once, curt and final. You'll write a full incident report, effective immediately, pending command review. He turned to leave. Did he think that was the end of it? But then, a voice, sharp as a blade, pierced the silence. Sergeant First Class Dunham, a man who'd barely spared her a glance since day one, stepped forward, hand on his carbine. "Permission to speak, sir." Redfield turned, shock flickering in his eyes. "Granted." Dunham tilted his head toward Reese, voice steady as rock. "She brought back 6 men from a dead zone. No backup, no QRF, no aerial support. They were gone, and now they're not. You can file paperwork, that's your right. But I'll tell you what I saw." He faced the crowd, voice rising just enough. "Oh, the power in it. She didn't come back for credit. She didn't ask for a ribbon. She didn't even raise her voice. She just did what none of us were ready to do." Did they feel the truth of it? Another voice broke free, a drone tech from the back. "I watched her cross Sector Echo on foot, no escort, no visual support. And I saw that beacon go live when she reached the ridge, perfect timing. Then a medic, fierce and sure, she stabilized 4 men before we got there. All of them would have bled out without her wraps. 2 had no pulse when she found them. She brought them back. Back, can you believe it?" Redfield stood silent, his gaze sweeping the crowd, grasping for control that slipped away like sand. But it was too late. Reese had done something no policy could erase, no reprimand could dim. She'd proven herself in blood and dust, beyond rules, beyond ranks. Had they finally seen her? That night, Reese didn't eat in the mess or return to the logistics tent. Instead, she sat alone in the supply hangar near the broken refrigeration unit, quietly patching her torn field vest with dental thread and gauze. Her back ached and her palms were raw, but the silence around her felt different. It wasn't the usual heavy, loaded silence. It was calm, almost peaceful. At 2300, a knock echoed through the hangar. She looked up to see Lieutenant Carmichael, one of the junior officers who had always avoided even glancing in her direction. He didn't enter but simply handed her a folder. "Commands requesting your initial statement for incident protocol. You don't have to write it now, just, they're expecting it by 0700, he said. Without a word, she took the folder. He hesitated, then added softly, "For what it's worth, I would have left them. I wouldn't have known what to do." "You did." She didn't respond. He turned and left. The report she submitted was brief, factual, and to the point. "I observed a critical failure in chain of command response to an active combat contact. I acted according to threat assessment and survival window. I accept full responsibility for my deviation from protocol." She signed it, folded it, and delivered it to command by 0600. By 0900, she was summoned to a closed-door session with the CO, Redfield, the base legal rep, and a remote link to Central Command. They debated her fate, some argued for reprimands, others for a transfer. But one voice on the call, an older general from HQ who had read the casualty report, spoke with finality: "We don't reprimand the ones who do what others won't. File the report, note the breach, but we don't bury valor in paperwork. Not this time." The room fell silent. Reese was dismissed without further comment. She returned to her post, the same as before. No medals, no announcements, she hadn't expected any. But things had shifted. Doors began opening for her before she reached them. Junior officers started calling her ma'am with respect. The weapons sergeant added her name to the firing range rotation without asking. And by the end of the week, in the small square behind the barracks, 6 soldiers gathered around a picnic table with dented canteens, bruised ribs, still alive because she hadn't waited for orders. They raised their coffee cups as she passed, not in salute, just acknowledgement, a gesture quieter than any medal or speech. 3 days passed without a single announcement or recognition. Her name wasn't on any bulletins, incident reports, or commendation drafts. Yet, she could feel the change in the atmosphere. The glances no longer lingered with judgment, and conversations didn't stop when she entered a room. The silence that followed her wasn't uncomfortable, it was different, respectful, like everyone was waiting for her to give the cue. She filed reports, reviewed tactical maps, and corrected minor errors in flight logistics. No one questioned her suggestions now. The calm sergeant double-checked her routing without hesitation. A drone operator, who hadn't spoken to her in weeks, left a folded terrain printout on her desk with highlighted sectors. No note. No explanation. Just recognition. Then, on the fourth day, at exactly 1,500 hours, the voice on the PA crackled to life. There was no urgency, no sirens, just a simple message: formation requested in Central Yard, 1,530 hours. Full unit presence. Nobody questioned it. By 1528, the yard was filled. There were no banners, no stages, just 3 stacked supply crates beside the flagpole. Soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, silent in the heat. Reese stood near the perimeter fence, waiting. No one had called her name yet. She waited until the second hand passed 30, then stepped forward. Her boots echoed against the gravel as she walked toward the center of the yard. Her vest was clean, her face unreadable. The silver bar on her collar caught the sun briefly before she stopped, centered herself, and stood still. Major Redfield approached slowly, alone. His face was hard, unreadable. He didn't carry any notes, just a small black box. He opened it and withdrew a silver medal, a silver star. No speech, no flourish. He stepped forward, pinned it to her chest with both hands, and then saluted her. For 3 full seconds, no one moved. Then, from the third row, a corporal raised his hand to his temple. Then another dozen. Finally, the entire formation saluted, silent, total, and absolute. No command had been given. Reese didn't cry. She didn't smile. She simply returned the salute with perfect form, turned, and walked back through the rows without a word. As she passed, soldiers straightened, their eyes following her without hesitation. There was no mockery, no assumptions, just respect, silent but undeniable. After that day, no one spoke of the medal again. Not on the base, not around her. No one needed to. The silence spoke for itself. She had bled, and in doing so, reminded everyone what that meant. The medal lay where she had left it, on the steel shelf above her cot, beside a folded map, a protein bar, and a black and white photo of her old unit. She hadn't touched it since the ceremony. It wasn't contempt or modesty, it just didn't matter. What mattered was the way things had changed. The subtle nods from even the most hardened officers, the way her orders didn't need to be repeated, and the way the silence in the room now spoke volumes. That night, the sky above FOB Kaidar was clear, the stars still, almost painted on the dark canvas above. Reese sat behind the generator shed, away from the compound's light. Her boots were off, her socks stained from the valley climb earlier. Her field notes were folded in her lap, unopened. She wasn't thinking about the mission. She was thinking about the ones she couldn't save, the ones who didn't make it back. Private Tucker's leg twisted under the wreckage. The absence of a pulse. The moment when she knew for sure that one name would never return. No mission ever came back whole. Not really. At 23:07, her encrypted comm blinked once. She didn't move right away. When she finally opened it, there was just one line of text, routed through a secure relay: "She did what you trained her to do." Reese stared at the words for a minute before locking the screen. She didn't need to ask who had sent it. Only 4 people knew who she used to be, and only one had ever taught her how to move under fire without being seen. He was retired now, somewhere unreachable, except when he chose to be found. But he had seen, heard, and understood. Behind her, the base remained quiet, no alarms, no scramble, no war. The men she had saved were sleeping now, bandaged and alive. Her job wasn't about being remembered. It was about making sure others could return home with their names attached to their faces. She leaned back against the warm concrete, closed her eyes, and let the silence linger a little longer. They had said she was too beautiful for combat. 12 hours later, she had walked into hell and come back with the proof, not to impress anyone, but because no one else had moved, and someone had to. Reese's story embodies the raw, unspoken strength of those who quietly shoulder the burden of duty, often unnoticed, and yet deeply respected. It's a stark reminder that real valor doesn't need applause, it thrives in silence, in action, in the quiet acknowledgement of those who truly understand what sacrifice means. Society often overlooks these unsung heroes, but it's those who step into the fire, not for recognition but because someone must, who hold the world together. Their worth is immeasurable, and they remind us of the strength in humility, courage in solitude, and resilience in the face of adversity. Thanks for joining us on this intense ride. If it resonated, hit subscribe, ring the bell, don't miss out. Here's to the silent sacrifices, together, we're unstoppable. See you next time.